What's up, family? It's Conversations with Kobe. You know what it is. Wednesday at 8:30. We're on here to talk to interesting people, to find about their lives, what inspires them, and how they can inspire others. So today, we're going to bring on this brother I know. He's an actor, an activist, poet, playwright. He's like this new age renaissance man who does a whole bunch of things and distributes his art and displays it for us to move forward. So I'm gonna bring him on, and I think he's extremely fascinating. So wait till we get to his story. My brother, Nathan James. How are you, brother?
What up, Fred? I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for being here.
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to ask you, like, people don't know, and I don't know what just happened, but people don't know you are an actor, and you've been on. Well, some people know, they may recognize your face. You've been on the likes of The Wire. You've been on Quantico, The Blacklist. I'm trying to go. It's on and on. It's funny too, and I'll get to that later. Why it's so funny. But you've been on Blue Blood, Blind Spot. So like you've done a lot of work. You're building a resume. But not only what they see on TV, but not what they may not see. You have a one-man play, right? You've also been in some films, some big films, and you also have a lot of poetry. And Fred, so I want to know, and Brother Nathan, how do we get from this little kid from Beltshoover to this man that we know today?
Well, man, it's funny because it all really started because I was I had commencement from elementary school, but I was in middle school, and I didn't want to go to the local area school of my neighborhood, Knoxville Middle School. You know what I mean? I went to an arts high school called Rogers Kappa in Pittsburgh. Okay. And I just wanted to go to middle school with my brother, but it was an art school. So my mom was like, well, to get in there, to be able to do some, you have to have some artistic talent. So I was like, well, I don't do anything. Like, what do I do? You know what I'm saying? And so she was like, actually, you can act because you were Pontius Pilate in the church plays. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Growing up, you the little disciple on Easter Sunday.
Yeah.
You in the Christmas play as a shepherd. You know what I mean? Plays like somebody big in the Christmas plays. So she was like, you can act. So she goes to the library and gets me a monologue called "You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown." And so I'm like, memorize this monologue. I go to the audition for the middle school. I audition. I get in, but I didn't realize that I was actually going to fall in love with acting. You know what I'm saying? Because my motive was getting into the same school with my brother. You know what I'm saying? Because it's like this big bro. You know what I mean? But when I get in there, I'm taking these acting classes, and I'm like, yo, I actually kind of like this. You know what I mean? And then show in the 8th grade at this theater called the Benedum Center in Pittsburgh, and I was like this funny character called the Boo, and the audience was like cracking up, and I'm on stage and I'm like, you know what, I can kind of get used to this. You know what I'm saying? Next day I shot the Jackson movie American Dream because it was filmed in Pittsburgh, and I met Boys and Men. I'm on a movie set. I'm seeing like the lights, the cameras, the different people working with everything, the trailers. And I'm like, okay, this is for me. So I knew at 14 years old that I wanted to be an actor. And I've just been working towards it ever since, man.
Wow. So tell us about Beltshoover, though, because that's still not a normal dream from a kid from Beltshoover.
Right. Beltshoover, man, I grew up during gang violence in the 90s. You know what I mean? And, Bloods and Crips was heavy in Pittsburgh then, and my neighborhood was Crips, so, and it's funny because I don't remember it being that way. I mean, everybody always sold drugs, you know what I'm saying? There was always violence or whatever, but as far as like red and blue and that war, you know what I mean? I didn't, except for the movie colors, and so when it started happening in Pittsburgh, I thought it was a joke. I thought everybody was just like, oh, the movie colors is cool, so now we Crips and they Bloods and everything like that. Then people start getting murdered, and I'm like, oh shit, this is they real about this, you know what I mean? I was a little dork, you know what I'm saying, in 8th grade. So I had this red black Charlie Brown sweatsuit that I used to wear all the time with the black Charlie Brown with like dookie chains on and everything. And he was standing with a baseball cap. And it was an all red sweatsuit, you know? And so I'm walking down the street one day, and my man walks up to me. He was like, yo, what you doing around here, man? You know, we cripping around this mug, you know what I'm saying, or whatever. And I was like, oh, it's the movies, you know what I'm saying, whatever. He's like, no, we serious around here. And so he pulls up, shows me his gun, and I'm like, oh, so it's real, you know what I mean? So like, you know, life had just changed. Like I didn't own anything red for years, you know what I'm saying? And so, you know, when I got to college and pledge, like, you know, I was like, okay, blue, I'm already from blue neighborhood, so these blue colors, I'm not going to get in trouble. I'll walk home in these, you know what I mean? The coppers might get in trouble when you walk around here, you know what I'm saying? But Bell Stewart was wild, man, but it also made me who I am today. You know what I'm saying? Because as a young kid, I always figured out that I was like kind of different into different things. So I had like two forms of education. I had education in the hood and learning street life, you know what I'm saying, and learning how to be street smart. But then I went to these conservatory classes on the weekends with kids who were from like gated communities, and I was like the only black kid there, you know what I mean? So a perspective of two different ways of living, you know what I mean? But it also prevented me from fitting in all the time because I didn't have a lot in common with the kids in my neighborhood. And I also didn't have a lot in common with the kids in my conservatory class because they was all white and from rich neighborhoods, and I was a product of my environment. You know what I mean? So it gave me a unique perspective to just be able to sit back and analyze things. You know what I'm saying? And so I started to sit back and analyze the social issues in my community, and I started to analyze the difference between the wealth gap with the white kids that I was taking classes with on the weekends, and it made me get aware of social issues and activism. You know what I mean? So, man, it made me tough. You know, it provided me with tears. It scared me sometimes, but you know, all those things have contributed to the man that I am and the artist that I am today.
Wow, that's dope. That's dope. So as you change, because you talk about that part, but there's a small change, and I can see from your story, because then when you went to Pitt, explain to us your major and your choice and how you got to that point of making that decision.
Well, when I got to Pitt, actually, I started out at Point Park University.
Okay.
Downtown Pittsburgh. But, you know, I'm in the acting department down there, and they're not doing any black shows. They want me to be the butler. They want me to be the slave, you know what I'm saying, and all this other type of stuff and all these white shows, but they're not doing any colorblind casting. And so I felt like it was racist. You know what I'm saying? So I was like, you know what? I don't feel comfortable being at this school or in this department anymore. And it was at that time that I was pledging my chapter EK out at Pitt. You know what I mean? I was like, well, I already got these connections at Pitt. I already got my blue and white family out there. This is racist down here. How about I just transfer to Pitt? You know, so I didn't go into Pitt as an undergrad. You know, I went into Pitt as a like second semester sophomore, you know. But it also prevented me from being able to create those connections. You know, like when you were a freshman on campus, you know, the freshman programs, that's where you meet your crew. That's kind of like your crew until you graduate, you know what I'm saying? Aside from your fraternity and everything. So I didn't really get a chance to do that. At Pitt, you know, I transferred into the acting department there. But then, you know, it was the same thing. You know what I'm saying? They weren't doing any black shows. They wanted me to play butlers. They wanted me to play slaves, you know, all this type of stuff. And I'm just like, you know what? I'm not with that, you know? So I decided for myself, like, I don't have to have an undergraduate degree in acting in order to be an actor. You know what I'm saying? I'm already an actor. I've been acting since I was 14 years old. So I decided to quit the theater department and I joined the Africana Studies department. I got an Africana Studies degree, you know, and that enabled me to really learn about my culture, learn about my people, and learn facts. Because, you know, a lot of people don't know facts these days. A lot of people just get information from blogs and they just run with it. You know what I'm saying? Reading books, getting actual information, and applying that to my art. You know what I'm saying? So that's how consciousness became a part of my art form, because I started out as a love poet. You know what I'm saying? Like a happy little kid, I was always looking to be in love. You know what I mean? I'm always writing love poetry. You know what I mean? So when I get to college and become an Africana Studies major, I meet a man by the name of Rob Penny who changed my life. You know, changed my whole perspective on everything. You know what I mean? It started out with him like asking a question in the Cosby Show. It's funny that he questioned the Cosby Show because the way everything came full circle. You know what I'm saying? But he's just like, you know, he let us see that they were white characters covered in chocolate. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
As innovative and as awesome as the Cosby Show was, and we all grew up on it, there was never any incidents in that show that showed you that this is an African American family. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's impossible for a family like this to live in Brooklyn and not experience racism at all. It's impossible for Theo to have never been pulled over by the cops. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't deal with any issues that Black people deal with. You know what I mean? So he started making these, like, just see things like that and just see things differently, kind of like pulled the blinders over my eyes. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And really changed my perspective in the artist that I am. You know what I mean? But I had a great balanced college experience because I had my theater going on with Country Repertory Theater. I had my Africana Studies major going on where I'm learning Black consciousness. And then I had my frat family where I'm wilding out, you know what I'm saying, and having fun. You know what I mean? So I had a really, really well-balanced college experience.
Wow. That it's interesting because, like, you say that, and I noticed, like, when you run down your list of shows you played in, you weren't the criminal except maybe once or twice. Most of the time you were the cop.
I was. So what happened with that is that you have no control over the way that casting directors see you in this business. You can say that you want all the roles you want, but they look at your face and then they send you an audition based on what they see. And at the time, with my close shave and I had my fade going on and everything, it gave me a real military look. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so shots actually looked like really serious and military. So they're like, oh, FBI, cop, you know what I'm saying, businessman, this and this and that. So I played, you know, basically anybody who has a suit on, I've probably played at some point. But in my big television appearances, you know, I got some good detective roles and some good detective work, which is kind of ironic with the activism that I do. You know what I'm saying? So people will, you're playing a cop on television, you know what I'm saying, but you're battling police brutality and white supremacy off, you know what I'm saying? But I'm like, that actually gives me a bit of advantage, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm in these shows and I'm portraying this cop, but at the same time, that's make-believe. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. That's a check. You know what I'm saying? I you know, cut the check, I cash it, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. But when I step off the stage, you know what I mean? I actually made some people on the shows that I was in who follow me on social media question themselves and question the way that they actually write for these shows. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. It was pretty ironic, but once I grew my facial hair and once I changed my look, then I started to get more comedic roles. Then I started to get like Standing Up, Falling Down with Billy Crystal. So it's funny. It's really all about the way casting directors and industry people see you, and they just place you, you know what I mean, like that. But I also have it in, I have an agreement with my representation that I don't go in for roles that are abusive to women. You know what I'm saying? I don't go in for drug dealer roles unless it's a drug dealer role with some substance, like on The Wire. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. But anything that just portrays Black men in a stereotypical light, I refuse to do. I won't even audition for it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And Kobe, man, if you refuse to do those things, there's very few things for Black men to be able to do. You know what I mean? And so you agree to, you know, take on these stereotypical things, man. It's like, your selection is limited, you know what I mean? So it's thug or cop sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A thug role with some substance behind it, if it's just making us look violent for the sake of looking violent, or if it's something showing us being abusive to women, I refuse to do it. And I've done that to this day. And to be honest with you, if I chose to do it and accept those roles, man, I could probably have a bigger career than I have right now.
So what continues to inspire you, knowing this challenge, or what motivates you, knowing you have this challenge in front of you to continue to keep going and to push forward?
You know what, man? I have accepted who I am as a man and who I am as an artist. You know what I mean? And the trappings of fame in Hollywood, you know what I mean? If they come, they come. You know what I mean? But I have integrity and I stand on what I stand on. I have a foundation. And I get a lot of inspiration from other people who walk in their own truth, but who also do their art at the same time. You know what I mean? People like Jesse Williams, you know what I'm saying? Who was anatomy, but used his platform to really speak up for his people. You know what I mean? People like Issa Rae who create, you know what I mean, inspiring work, you know what I mean, about Black women. Ada DuVernay, who creates inspiring work regardless of the people who say anything about what she's doing. You know, my thing is I have a message and I have a story to tell, and nothing's really going to stop me from telling that story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got a vision from God a long time ago that I'm supposed to do this, and I'm just being obedient and patient.
I hear that. So let's talk, since you mentioned telling stories, let's talk about your one-act play. I mean, your one-man play, excuse me, not one-act play. Your one-man play. Let's introduce it. Growing Pains, right? And let's tell the people what that is and let us know why you put that together.
I put Growing Pains together because, like I said earlier in the interview, I'm growing up in Belsuver, but I'm having these two different experiences. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm taking the things that I'm learning from my conservatory and the things that I'm learning in my neighborhood, and I'm putting it into one evening's worth of work. So what it is really my battles with challenging masculinity, challenging stereotypes against Black men, and challenging a lot of the social issues which plague the Black community, and trying to peel back those layers instead of dealing with all the problems on the surface level. You know what I mean? So I'm really raw and honest, you know what I'm saying, inside of this thing. And hopefully, you know, seeing me be vulnerable as a Black man can encourage a lot of other Black men to be vulnerable as well, man, because we are carrying this breastplate of masculinity right now, and it's something that's being challenged, you know what I mean? But at the same time, we are not being given the room and the space to drop this breastplate of masculinity, because as you know, growing up like we grow up, ain't you know, you don't get a lot of chances to shed no tears.
Nah.
And you don't get a lot of chances to be sensitive. You know what I mean? Nobody gives a shit. You know?
Yeah.
It's like you got to suck it up and you just got to keep it moving. You know, I feel like we are held to this standard of manhood and masculinity that's being challenged right now, but we're also not being given the space to be vulnerable. Because you see, you know, when a famous Black man is vulnerable and he cries, he turns into a meme. You know, everybody laughs at him. But at the same time, everybody's telling us to be soft and vulnerable. You know what I mean? So what I'm trying to do with Growing Pains is show the vulnerability that I had when I grew up, showing how a heartbreak had an effect on me. You know what I'm saying? Because we don't get a chance to talk about that too much. We don't get a chance to talk about when we had our hearts broken and we had nobody to talk to because everybody would tell us to man up and stop crying. You know what I'm saying? So it hardens you up and it hardens your perspective on women. You don't get a chance to, you know, express those hurt emotions. So
and that's an interesting conversation because there's a lot of layers, like the situations, the conversations and questions I have. Like I'm actually writing a paper on Jay-Z and how we judge him. Is he the mirror or the lamp? And he is both. Sometimes he's the mirror, sometimes he's the lamp. And when we talk about these things, we forget when the men were taken out of the community, right? The only piece of people we had to learn from was other teenage young men.
And rappers.
Yeah, and we got really bad advice.
Really bad advice, bro. Fuck bitches get money is horrible advice. Excuse me.
Yeah, and with no compassion for anybody unless they're doing the same things you are.
Yeah, and even with Hov, man, it's like, you know, it's interesting that you bring him up because the elevator incident. You know what I'm saying? I look at the Jay-Z elevator incident and the Quavo and Saweetie elevator incident or any other elevator incidents, and it's like Jay-Z stood there and let Solange wail on him. Did not hit her back because he is a big man, and if he would have cracked her, he probably would have like really did some damage to her. You know, he stood there and absorbed those blows because that's what you're taught as a man. You're taught as a man that you do not put your hands on women. Even if a woman putting their hands on you do not hit women. And he that rule, and we slandered his ass for it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
we
some
made
people did.
him all over social media. We called him all kinds of punks. We laughed at him for getting his ass whooped in the elevator. But if he would have cracked Solange in the face, then he would have been the bad guy.
Yeah, well, but you got to think. Like, I don't want to get too deep because I don't want to go off. But we could talk about this. Yeah. So if you look at the evolution of Jay, right, and you talk about the issues, he was like any other 15-year-old boy struggling in that environment who felt like he had no other opportunities. And as he grew and decided to grow, you watch things evolve after he made conscious choices about getting the bag, as kids like to say. And once he got the bag, you got to see his true evolution. But we're not gonna hold it because my want to hear about your true evolution. That's what I called you on here. We ain't gonna sit and get
it all wraps into what I'm talking about with the show. You know what I'm saying? Challenging our ideas of masculinity versus who we really are as people and individuals, and providing a space to show the vulnerabilities that I had throughout life so that I can encourage other Black men to be vulnerable and put down that breastplate of masculinity and get the help that you need and heal as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's and that's the thing. I do want to check that out. You got to leave me the link so I can drop it in the or someplace where we can see it, or let us know when you get ready to do it again. And so now as you move, what else? What really motivates your poetry now?
Well, really, my poetry now is becoming part of my film projects. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
So right now is doing a lot of screenwriting and playwriting. And I'm taking some of the plays or some of the poems from Growing Pains and some poems that I have that have nothing to do with Growing Pains, and I'm making plays out of them. You know what I'm saying? So I have one piece about a father coming home and teaching his son what nigger means because somebody called him a nigger in school. You know what I'm saying? So I'm taking that poem and I'm going to be doing a voiceover of that poem while I watch actors walk through the motions of portraying that. You know what I mean? Okay. So what I'm doing right now is turning my poems into stories because I'm not really on the circuit no more. I really don't really hit the lounges anymore. I mean, there really are no lounges right now because of COVID. But I'm not like on the scene as far as like spoken word goes anymore. So I'm still writing, but I'm taking my writing and turning it into stories and films.
Okay. And right now, video is the most powerful medium on the planet.
Oh, man, I wish I had some Zoom stock before this all started, bro.
Yes. Who would have knew? Who would have
knew? It's hand sanitizer. Who would have known?
Yeah. Bleach.
Charmin.
Yeah. You know, who would have knew?
Who would have knew, man?
So now I hope people are getting this kind of like I'm getting this complete picture of who Nathan James is. And this kid who's taken both sides of his experiences and allowed them to challenge society and also challenge who he was going to be. Because you didn't have to be this kid or have to be that kid. You're able to blend them and create Nathan James.
Yeah, and you know what? It's interesting, man, because I was one of those regular kids. I wasn't the smart kid, man. And, you know, when people hear me talk sometimes, they're surprised that, you know, I wasn't like a scholar or anything, but I was always a really, really average kid, 2.0, 2.4, 2.2. I graduated high school with a 2.6. I graduated college with a 2.6. You know what I'm saying? So I've never been like the smartest guy in the room, and I've never been like the hard head that the teacher always has to like sit on all the time. But what happens with that, man, is that you have a lot of young men who are just average guys. And I was lucky enough to know what I wanted to be and know what my purpose is. But for young men who don't have that purpose, the kids who get all the attention are the kids who are excelling and the kids who are like acting out. You know what I'm saying? So they give stuff to the kids that's acting out, give things to the kids that's excelling, and they ignore the average kids in between. And the average kids in between can go either way. And when these kids, they go to the streets. You know what I'm saying? How many dudes do you know that went to the street life who, if they just had somebody just give them a little bit of influence when they were 14, they could have went a completely different direction?
Yeah, it's a million of them. I'm going to tell you the funny story, man. I'm going to tell you a funny story, and it's a brief one. So I posted something about what did you think about me when you first saw me play sports? You know, somebody put that thing out during COVID. So I just copied it. And one of my friends was like, you were last in every race. It's the truth. Right? But I go to college, I make it, and I'm this good athlete. I do very well. I play 3 sports in college. I run in track, but I wasn't the best athlete. And I've seen a million athletes or academics like me and that's what sometimes, honestly, sometimes I have an imposter syndrome. Like I'm really not that good because I wasn't the best in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
And even with some of the academics, like I was
very average at sports. Very average at sports.
Oh man, I was average only when it was coming home. If I wasn't in my neighborhood, I was kicking butt.
Right.
But when I went home, I was little Cove down the street. Right? So a lot of them, like I could speak of 3 people that made it out of my neighborhood, and a lot of million others that were way better athletes or just as intelligent as I was. And it's
I'm one of the only ones who made it out my hood, man, or made it and out doing something in the world, man. When I go home, people be like, yo, you putting like not just Pittsburgh, but Belsuva on the map because, it's a hard place to get out of. You know what I'm saying? It's a real hard place to get out of,
Well, look, when I go there, because my line brother has an establishment in Pittsburgh. I better be able to say your name and they leave me alone.
Wait, who's your LB?
That William Robinson. He owns Robinson's.
Oh yeah. I didn't know that was your LB.
Yeah, because the day we went over, he left. He left that night after we crossed.
Oh wow.
And never came back to Cheney. So nobody's ever really seen us as a whole line together.
Yeah. Okay.
But look, I'm not gonna hold you. I keep this short and sweet, man.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about like if you had another brother out there, not necessarily actor or anything else, just another brother out there, what would you leave him with? And what advice would you give him? And then I got one other question after that.
Okay.
No, answer that one first.
All right. I tell that brother, man, to learn who his true, authentic self really is. You know what I'm saying? Because if he can learn who he really is and walk in his truth and walk to the beat of his own drum, things will kind of fall in place. You'll figure out your life's purpose. Once you figure out who you are, your life's purpose comes right after that. You know what I'm saying? And be patient, be diligent, pray, meditate. You know what I mean? And keep going towards that goal at all costs, man. But always be true and authentic to who you are, and everything else will follow.
Wow, deep. Now, my last thing is if you had something, any person, and you could say something to any person that you wanted to, dead, alive, or otherwise, what would you say? Who would it be, and what would you say?
Good one. Man, I would love to sit down and have a conversation with Malcolm X. You know what I'm saying? To just pick his brain about how to be that brave and that diligent in a time period where it's not as popular as it is now. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're dealing with racism now. We're dealing with a lot of things now, but we can also say a lot of things that you couldn't just say in 1963. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Without a lynch mob or the cops coming to your house and dragging you out. You know what I'm saying? So learning that bravery and what do you tell yourself before you get up there to that microphone and say something that you know that anybody could be in the crowd with a shotgun at any point. You know what I mean? And I would just love to because a lot of times, I'm an activist and everything, but bravery gets to a certain point. And then you start to question yourself. And like you said, as African Americans, we're born with imposter syndrome. You know what I'm saying? How do you get past that imposter syndrome? How do you get past that pressure? How do you balance everything in your life and still be an activist? You know what I mean? Like, I would love to just wake him up and just be a sponge. You know what I'm saying? And soak it all in.
I hear that. Well, brother, we appreciate you here at Conversations with Kobe. You are a friend to the show. I will continue to follow your success and your rise.
Thank you, brother.
Brother, I appreciate you. Please check out my brother, Nathan James. He is definitely dope. He has a lot to say. I can't wait to see his one act play when I get a chance. So please, whenever you close on the East Coast, let me know. Yeah, and we're getting ready to get out of here. Remember, I'm going to tell you this. Magic Melanin Shea Butter. You got to get it. I tell everybody.
Magic Melanin Shea Butter.
Yep, I bought it for my wife. And like I said, when she put it on, it was bound chicka wow. So,
where you get the Muslims? Where you get it from?
Nah, it's online. Magic Melanin Shea Butter. It's okay. So real quick, because it's my little commercial, and I'm supporting her company, and she supports me. It's the soror who makes. She was on the show too. She makes the Magic Melanin Shea Butter all natural because when she got breast cancer, all the stuff she was putting on her body had chemicals in it, and she wanted to eliminate it as a factor. So check it out, brother. Magic Melanin Shea Butter. And to all my peoples in Philly, don't forget to go to 3rd and Girard, the UPS store. If you got to ship it, they'll send it. All right, brother, take it easy. Much love and be beautiful.